Questions for reflection. In our first reading, the Apostle Paul writes to the Corinthian Christians and to us about generosity. We're reminded once again that the Lord wants His people to give generously, not with reluctance or out of compulsion, but out of free choice. And for those who are generous, God promises to enrich them with every need. In fact, our gifts are always multiplied, and it is those gifts which make prosperity possible for all, like seeds which produce many times their number when planted. So it is with our gifts and talents. When we give freely of ourselves to God, what we give is multiplied and becomes a source of abundance shortly after. This requires a conversion of the mind, a fresh new way of thinking about possessions. The same apostle exhorted the Christians in Rome, and he exhorts us, and I quote, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that you may prove what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect." That's Romans 12:2. Some Christians are called to a voluntary embrace of economic poverty as part of a specific vocation. I respect that vocation as a prophetic sign for us all. However, most of us live in the material world of bills, possessions, and financial challenges. We're called to commerce, called to turn commerce toward what is true and good and noble. In dealing with bills, possessions, and financial challenges, we're invited by the Lord to receive the goods of this earth, including money, as His gift, and to then use them with the freedom which comes from having a real, living, vibrant relationship with Him. Our relationship to this world and the goods of this world should mirror that of God's Son whom we follow. Jesus was born in a manger. As an adult, He had no place to lay His head. He was raised in a simple home by a woman whose heart recognized true wealth. Remember the words that the angel spoke to Mary when she asked how it could be that she would bear the Messiah. Nothing is impossible with God. That's Luke 1:37. Mary understood that when you have the Lord, you have it all. She lived in what I like to call the economy of heavenly scale. And if we choose to do so, we can live there too. There's an invitation to evangelical simplicity in God's loving plan for each one of us. To those who voluntarily embrace it, evangelical simplicity also becomes an invitation to love and a school of sanctity. All relationships with persons as well as with the goods of the earth can be changed by its embrace. Consider what you might be able to give, be it to the church, to a family member, or to any one of the many worthy projects in service to the Lord, online or in your community. Pray, and if you feel moved, try giving something of yourself, be it time, talent, or resources. Then see what the Lord does to multiply your gift. In our responsorial psalm for today's Holy Mass, we're given a key to experiencing the blessings of the Lord. Perhaps it's what today's youth would call a life hack, a simple move to make things easier, or better yet, to make life fuller and happier. We're told that if we keep God's commandments, we shall receive blessings. But what does it mean to keep the Lord's commandments? It means to have faith in God. That includes trusting that He will protect and provide for us, because He really does love us. It means to be honest and upright in our dealings, and to give freely and generously to others. Consider what you can do to better keep God's commandments. What act of kindness, honesty, or generosity will relieve your anxiety and invite blessing? The gospel reading for today is short on words but profoundly rich in meaning. In this brief parable, Jesus explains that through dying, through falling to the ground, a seed gives life to a rich harvest. He was certainly speaking of His own death to come, as well as His resurrection. But His words also apply to us as individuals. We must die to our earthly selves, both literally and figuratively, so we can be transformed into the saints we're called to be. We're called to die to our disordered earthly desires so as to rise to new life in Him, to give ourselves, our lives to Him and for others in Him. Our natural desires should be directed toward the things of the Lord. Our life is now to be lived for Jesus Christ. Our converted desires should now be for the Lord and His eternal plan. This should lead to a new way of life. For example, we're called to attend Holy Mass. It's more than an obligation, though it is that. It's an invitation to encounter and receive more of the Lord. We're called to keep God's commandments, to follow the teaching of the gospel, to understand the teaching of His church and voluntarily live that teaching. Even though it means a reorientation of our lives, that's the plan. And finally, we're all called to die in communion with Christ and His church, so we can be resurrected as saints. We should not face this call to death and rising, to ongoing conversion and holiness as onerous or as a cause for sorrow or anxiety. In fact, it's the path to true joy in this life and the next. There's nothing more wonderful than to know, love, and serve the Lord.